Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual launch of Depaul's Strategic Plan 2021 to 2023, A Path Home. So in light of current circumstances, we are virtually holding this. So we're really happy that you're here and that you could join us today. My name is Mairead McGinn, and I'm the Director of Fundraising and Communications at Depaul, and I'll be your host for today. Depaul have been working on this strategic plan for the last 12 plus months, so really since January 2020, pre-COVID. So we are delighted to be at this point today. So I'm delighted to be joined by a number of exciting speakers today, including 3 of our own service users, as well as the Minister for Housing, Local Government in the Republic of Ireland, Darragh O'Brien, Grania Long, who's the newly appointed Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive. We have our own CEO of Depaul, David Carroll, the Chair of Depaul Housing, Eamon Conlon, and our Group CEO, Mark McGreevy. So our agenda for today is now up on the screen for everyone to see. So we've got a jam-packed schedule for everyone. We've got Eamon and the Minister, and we'll have David and Grania and Mark. So throughout the event, we'll also be holding a number of interactive polls dotted through the agenda, so please get involved where you can. I know that there are some services watching together and some service users watching together, so just answer as best as you can. So I'm delighted to welcome our first guest speaker. So it's the Chairperson of Depaul Housing, Eamon Conlon, and he will be speaking about the role of Depaul in ending homelessness and changing lives. Welcome, Eamon.
Thanks, Mairead. Good morning, everyone. As Chair of Depaul Housing Association, and on behalf of John Murphy, the Chair of Depaul Ireland, who unfortunately can't be here today, and on behalf of our fellow trustees, I'm delighted to participate in launching the Depaul strategy for 2021 to 23. Development of our strategy has been informed by wide consultation, and I want to acknowledge in particular the input of our service users, some of whom you'll hear from today, our staff advisory group, and all our trustees. We're also joined by some of our key corporate partners, and I'd like to acknowledge their support too. And I want to thank the participants in today's programme, in particular Darragh O'Brien, TD, the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage, Grania Long, CEO of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and Mark McGreevy, Group CEO of Depaul International, and our service users. This lineup reflects the importance of homelessness as an issue in Ireland and our efforts to address it, north and south, and the fact that homelessness is a global issue, which Depaul International is seeking to tackle in several countries. Depaul has played a significant role in responding to the growing number of people experiencing and at risk of homelessness in recent years in Ireland. In line with our vision, mission, and values, we've focused on addressing the needs of the most vulnerable, for example, through our low threshold services. And we've also expanded our range of services to include groups such as people trapped in direct provision and people experiencing and recovering from addiction who need special supports. The pandemic has been a very testing time, and we were called on to operate additional services at short notice. And I and the other trustees are particularly proud of the way our staff are responding successfully to these challenges. The launch of this strategy is a key milestone in the development of Depaul services and for the future development of Depaul and Depaul Housing. It's informed by our experience across a range of services, north and south, not least during the COVID-19 pandemic, by our vision, mission, and values, by the evolution of public policy, in particular towards more housing-led responses to homelessness, and by wide consultation. Our vision statement has been amended to one of a society in which everyone across the world has a place to call home and a stake in their community. And this is intended to reflect the international dimension of homelessness. Our strategy is built on 5 pillars, which David Carroll, our CEO, will outline to us all in more detail. The strategy was the subject of much deliberation to ensure that the objectives, the key actions, and the output indicators represent a coherent and deliverable plan over the 3-year period. We want to confirm that the trustees will give David and his team our full support to implement successfully this strategy over the period. Thank you. And now back to you, Mairead.
Thanks, Eamon, and thanks for those really great words. I think it's really interesting for everyone here to hear about, I suppose, the impact of the report as well on the housing solutions. So thank you so much for joining us and for speaking to everyone who's here today. So I'm now going to move on, and I'm going to show a video from the Minister for Housing, Local Government and Heritage in the Republic of Ireland, Minister Darragh O'Brien. So the Minister wasn't able to be here today, but he recorded this earlier this week for us.
Dave, Darragh O'Brien and Sean, I want to thank you all for the invitation to speak at today's launch of Depaul's Strategic Plan 2021 to 2023. It really is great to see so many individuals who either work with Depaul or benefit directly from the services you provide, and it's great to see you all being able to attend today. For almost 20 years now, Depaul have been to the forefront of the fight to tackle homelessness and have been a really important partner for me and my department in helping individuals and households to exit homelessness. The really unique circumstances presented by the pandemic have highlighted more than ever before the importance of the work done by Depaul and other organisations. The people of Ireland genuinely owe a great debt of gratitude to the tireless efforts of all involved. COVID-19 has proven to be an accelerant to putting in place enhanced services and support for those who are in need of them, and in helping more individuals to exit homelessness to a stable tenancy. This is evidenced by the progress made in reducing the number of individuals experiencing homelessness, which has fallen by almost 20% in the last year. The progress is especially clear with regard to family homelessness, which has fallen by actually well more than a third in the past year. And while this number still remains too high, it represents the lowest number of families in emergency accommodation since March 2016. This progress has been made possible thanks to the collective efforts of bodies such as Depaul, working in collaborative partnership with local authorities and indeed my own department. I want to assure you that there's no shortage of will or determination to deal with the issue of homelessness. It remains an absolute top priority for me, for my department and for our government. Resources and funding are not an obstacle to the urgent effort required. Indeed, in the budget 2021, the total housing provision of 3.3 billion will allow us, subject to the impact of COVID-19 this year, meet additional social housing needs of over 28,500 households and support the delivery of 12,750 social homes. Homeless funding has been increased with 218 million provided in 2021 to help those in need, and to work closely with stakeholders, caseworkers and homeless people on a suite of measures to help rough sleepers into sustainable accommodation. Homelessness, as you know, is complex, and casual factors and family circumstances vary considerably. A whole of government approach is required in dealing with this ongoing challenge. A really good example of this cross-government commitment to addressing homelessness is the national rollout of the Housing First programme. Housing First enables people who may have been homeless and who have high levels of complex needs, be they physical health, mental health or indeed addiction issues, to obtain permanent secure accommodation with the provision of the intensive supports to help them maintain their tenancies. By the end of April, 539 former rough sleepers or long-term users of emergency accommodation were in their own permanent homes under this programme. Tenancies are in place in every region in the country, and progress on Housing First has really been so impressive and is a clear exemplar of how interagency approach to a complex problem can deliver real and meaningful results for our people. This commitment to Housing First has been deepened through our programme for government, which plans to expand it out further. And I know that we will all welcome this and look forward to seeing it being delivered. The strategic plan being launched today provides a concrete blueprint for the next 3 years and shows the important role of your organisation and the role that that will play in helping our society to tackle homelessness, to help to ensure that progress made recently will continue into the future. I'd really like to thank you once more for the really important work that is done by Depaul and for the great honour of actually speaking at your launch today. Keep up the great work.
So thanks to the Minister for taking the time to give us this video. So it was really interesting for us to hear, and I hope everyone here heard the thanks from the Minister for all the hard work that has taken place over the last number of months, particularly in light of COVID. And I think what we've tried to do, and David, our CEO, will speak to that, is really look at that piece around what the strategy is at government level and try and work with our own strategic plan on helping to have the best possible outcome for our service users. So I know there's a number of service users here today, so I hope that you hear that when we say we're trying our absolute hardest to support wherever is possible. So I'm going to move on actually to our first service user video. So Tableau and her son Nathan. And after that, we're going to go straight in to hear from our CEO, David Carroll. So Tableau and her son, Nathan, who are both currently in Mater Dei in Northern Ireland. Tableau speaks about her experience of Depaul so far and her hopes for the future. So please make sure your volume is up so you can hear everything in the video.
My name is Mamu. I live in Mater Dei hostel with my son, Nathan.
And how long have you been here?
I've been here about 2 months and almost 3 months. People in the Mater Dei, they helped me a lot, not from before when I was in granny house. They was not good for my baby, doesn't have a garden, and that the house was not furnished. Then they moved me here. They helped me with the moving here, with everything, and even since I come here, I'm happy, and it is their place for my baby, and even the staff was good with me, and they helped with a lot of things. They helped with my children and with everything. I really want education because I'm not educated. I want education, and I want safe area and a safe place for my baby, and a safe house. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, everybody. I'm delighted to be here to present today's strategic plan. Thank you, Tablet, and your son Nathan for presenting today on video. It's a demonstration of hope and positivity of the family work that we do in Belfast, both in Mater Dei, but through our family float support services, which deliver into Grania House, which Tablet came from. What we want to do now is to introduce our second poll of the day. And this poll is around, we've always worked with the most vulnerable in our society. And we want to get your views on what area of work that you believe Depaul should develop further. And the choices are mental health, physical health, addiction services, housing, provision and resettlement support, and advocacy and service user voice. So we've always worked with the most vulnerable in our society. We want to get your views on what area of work you believe Depaul should develop further. So looking at the results, housing provision and resettlement support, 47%. I mean, that's really interesting that there's an overwhelming kind of focus and direction on people getting out of homelessness. We have 31% around mental health, addiction services 6%, and advocacy and service user voice of 14%. So that's really, I think, a positive message coming from yourselves today in the direction that and the focus that we're taking, but also particularly important because of the huge importance that we have on housing-led approaches within this particular strategic plan. So I'm going to move on and present the strategic plan this morning. I'm absolutely delighted to be here. It's been a long road to kind of get to this point over the last year. But welcome to our service users, staff, volunteers and invited guests. You're very welcome to this event, which is a pivotal point for Depaul in setting our course and agenda over the next 3 years. Looking back at our last strategy, there have been many significant achievements and much to be proud of. And there's so many examples of our work over the last number of years. For example, our response to the housing crisis in the Republic of Ireland and in Dublin, with the provision of temporary accommodation beds for single people at a time when they needed it the most, taking people off the streets. Our introduction of the drug naloxone throughout all of our services north and south, which has saved many lives. Our establishment of our abstinence-based services, Birchhaven and Suvness. Our continued influence and service provision in Northern Ireland, where we established family float and support, and continued work to promote the housing first concept as a key service delivery model tackling long-term homelessness. Our work in Derry to adapt our service user model to match changing trends and needs, where drugs has become as much, if not more prevalent than alcohol amongst the people we work with. Our work with people from migrant backgrounds has been truly exceptional in pioneering approaches in working with people emerging from the direct provision system, helping them to establish roots in their community. And the establishment of Depaul Housing, which is a huge significant step for Depaul, which will bring badly needed housing for the people we serve. In the last 15 months during the COVID pandemic, we've been at the forefront of service delivery, establishing 5 new services at different times, supporting an additional 230 beds for people with complex health needs who've needed shielding. And we provided additional housing first beds in Northern Ireland. This ability to respond to real need has been one of the most admirable characteristics of Depaul since the beginning. Last year, we decided to enter into consultation with staff, service users, and our external stakeholders on our strategy. We asked ourselves the question, was this the right thing to do at the height of a pandemic? Overwhelmingly, the answer was yes. This root and branch examination of why Depaul are here, what is our identity, and what we should focus on has equipped us as never before to go forward and take on some of the most difficult challenges that this island faces in homelessness and housing. Depaul are here with a very clear purpose that we can play a part with others in ending homelessness for some of the most vulnerable people on this island. This opportunity to reiterate our values and our words will give us a sense of momentum, direction, and renewed energy emerging from a time where we've had to dig deep. Nobody using our services, our volunteers, our staff have not had times where we've had to use all of our resilience to get through this time. So our plan is hugely important. So, the Depaul Strategic Plan 21 to 23. What better way to start with the picture of our first Depaul housing tenant? This picture encapsulates the reason why we exist. The choice of this image is a signal that even though our history and continued focus lies in the provision of low threshold services, that this organisation's purpose very much lies in finding housing solutions for the people we work with, and at the same time staying true to the way we've always worked. We are truly transferring our low threshold ethos to the community The name of our strategy, A Path Home, reflects our belief that whoever you are, you've the right to a home, and with the right supports, that roots can be established in communities. Depaul believes first and foremost in housing-led solutions to homelessness. We acknowledge the need for emergency and temporary accommodation for those experiencing homelessness, of which we've developed an expertise and specialism in. But this needs to be alongside supplying housing for people who are homeless and with the lived experience of homelessness. As well as pushing for and focusing on more housing-led solutions, Depaul believes there are other important elements which can end homelessness as well. And as part of this, we believe there needs to be much more of a focus on community-based services and preventative type services, as well as increased investment in health and health interventions for people with the lived experience of homelessness. What's hugely important for us is to revisit our identity as an organisation. Depaul is very much a pioneering organisation. Providing specialist services and solutions is very much part of our ethos as an organisation. It lies in serving those most in need, those who have been forgotten by others. For example, we pioneered the very first long accommodation unit which provides specialist harm reduction in Belfast, Stella Maris. We managed Tusnua, an accommodation service for women leaving prison. We pioneered the very first service model where people living in direct provision who have gained legal status are supported to move into communities all across Ireland. We commenced the first Housing First service in Northern Ireland. This identity of being pioneers, taking risks, is reflected in our Vincentian ethos, which is at the heart of our work. So as Eamon mentioned earlier on, our vision will change as part of our new strategic plan. But our vision, mission and values are at the centre of our work and drives us every day. And our vision will change to one of a society in which everyone across the world has a place to call home and a stake in their community. The addition of the phrase across the world is really important. Depaul is part of a wider Depaul grouping who provides services and support to people experiencing homelessness in countries such as the USA, Croatia, France, the Ukraine and the United Kingdom. This phrase recognizes the importance of Depaul's global effort to end homelessness. And this is another important element within our strategic plan. We will endeavour at all times to share information with our global counterparts. The impact of Depaul goes far beyond our own jurisdiction, and our own experiences in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland can help shape policy in other parts of the world and vice versa. So, looking at our pillars are over 5 key areas, and it differentiates our work. People with lived experience of homelessness are unique individuals and require unique interventions. Prevention is at the core of what we do, preventing people who've moved out of homelessness or who are at risk of homelessness go into temporary accommodation. So our prevention services are key and we wish to build upon them. Our work with families and young people is key. We want to work and continue to work in making sure that intergenerational homelessness ceases to exist on this island. The reason why we started was our high support accommodation, our approach to harm reduction and low threshold. And it continues to be a core interface and intervention at the forefront of homelessness on a day-to-day basis, offering badly needed services to those who need it the most with the most complex difficulties. Our pillar of health and rehabilitation is a fundamental belief that people deserve, no matter who they are, another chance. And that health and health interventions are a key part in ending homelessness. And our key pillar of housing, signalled by the establishment of Depaul housing, is another key pillar that will continue to help us to make sure that homelessness has no place. Impact of the plan. The plan has no meaning unless it has impact. It makes changes to people's lives. And we want each service and each department to analyse what impact we will have. And we will set targets and we will set indicators and objectives against these impacts. And those impacts will be to eliminate where possible and minimise time sleeping rough. It will try to avoid, if we can, or minimise time in temporary accommodation. We wish to continue to support housing in the community with our community-related services and to be able to strengthen those particular interventions. We want to provide housing, and that might be with others in collaboration with other housing partners, local authorities, private rented sector. But we ourselves have set our stall through Depaul housing in the provision of housing for people who have the most complex issues, but who deserve a right to a place in our community. Everybody we come in contact, we should improve their lives. So our impact has to be on improving the lives of those we come into contact with on a day-to-day basis. And our voice is strong. We have huge experience and we want to influence policy in the right direction. It's important in our sense of direction of where we go in the next number of years to have a look at how we've developed as well and how we've evolved. And we will be 20 years old next year, which is a huge significant step for Depaul. And our foundations lie within the establishment of and pioneering of low threshold services on this island. By doing that, we've developed specialised services. I've talked about our direct provision, housing first, services for women coming out of prison, our harm reduction accommodation services. We will continue to deliver specialised services and we will want to be innovative and pioneering going forward. And now this renewed additional focus on building permanent solutions through housing-led services becomes even more important in our plan. So our services will focus on low threshold, specialisation and housing-led approaches. The plan has 3 elements. We have 5 themes. This is the area that drives our change. Under those themes will be a set of objectives. And we expect there will be high-level outcomes driven by the executive team and the service leadership group, which will be the strategies delivery model. But each project and each department will have their own outcomes as well. Our 5 themes are our services and housing, our people, our organisation, our service users, and our voice. The reason why we exist is to provide our services. So we have a number of objectives under this whole area. We want to recognise the unique cultural, political, and economic context in which we operate. We now operate nationally, and we operate obviously for the last 16 years in Northern Ireland. Local needs and context has to inform service delivery in each of our areas. We will continue to want to work with the most marginalised in our society. But in doing that, we have to take into account government, national, and housing and homelessness and social care policy with the aim of ending homelessness. Go back to talk about taking risks and being innovative. We will deliver and identify gaps for bespoke specialist services for people at risk of or currently homeless. And the quality of our services is key. One of the major identifying characteristics of Depaul is the quality of our services, and quality standards and safe and effective and compassionate service provision will be at the forefront. Theme 2 is our people, our staff and our volunteers. Our staff and our volunteers are our most important resource. We acknowledge the complexity of your work, and we acknowledge that your health and well-being is key in delivering services. The last 15 months has never been such an example of how important that is. Our workforce structures, policies and procedures require to be fit for purpose and reflect an agile and flexible approach in how we work. We recognise that learning and development programmes to reflect changing needs of the environment and our service user group have to develop with the changing needs and the complexity of our work. And we're absolutely committed to continuing to deliver on the progress that we've made, particularly through our IT platforms in the last number of years on this whole area. We recognise that volunteers have a unique role in working with the lived experience of homelessness. And because volunteering has reduced necessarily in the last year, 15 months, Depaul will provide a roadmap back to volunteering in order to recognise the importance of volunteers in our service delivery. Our organisation, it's so important that our organisation is robust and sustainable going forward. So we will make sure that we're compliant with legislation, policy, standards, including the role of our Board of Trustees. Our funding and our financial robustness does depend on maximising appropriate levels of statutory funding. And we plan to deliver an ambitious and inspirational fundraising programme. The last 15 months has shown how organisations have to be adaptable and flexible. So we will look at our risk management processes, learning from the last 15 months and other major global economic or national or regional events. We wish to improve our business infrastructure systems. We have to make sure that we're as efficient and stable and sustainable as possible in how we work together and the systems that we operate in order to be able to have high standard services. And we are looking to our wider responsibilities on this planet. and we will take a responsible environmental approach in the delivery of our services and our housing, making sure that our carbon footprint is minimised and reduced. Theme 4 is our service users, and in previous plans our service users have been contained within themes, but it's a major declaration by the organisation that our service users is one of our major themes going forward. So we will develop an engagement strategy with people with the lived experience of homelessness that aims to increase service user opportunity, to influence service design and delivery. We've had great success in our health peer mentoring program, and we wish to co-design with and provide vocational development opportunities for the people using our services. We will work with representative structures, particularly in our housing, around tenants committees in all of our housing projects. Theme 5 is our voice. I mentioned earlier on that our experience and our day-to-day work is hugely important. And we've now 19 years of experience of delivering the most complex services on this island. And we want to strengthen our voice. And this will be done through a communications and advocacy strategy to raise the Depaul profile through effective communications. We will use data and research to develop evidence for the purpose of effective interventions and advocacy. And we will use this evidence to communicate and engage with government, statutory services, and the rest of civil society to communicate evidence of our own research and experience, to deliberate and communicate of what works. A core part of our voice will be our future as an active member of Depaul International that we've talked about already of its importance, contributing to a vision of society in which everyone across the world has a place to call home and a stake in the community. And Mark McGreevy, our Group Chief Executive, will speak more about that at a later stage. So that's our plan. A hugely ambitious plan, which will take every one of us within our organisation and will take cooperation and partnership with our funders, with our stakeholders, but most importantly, with people with the lived experience of homelessness. And I'm really delighted to get to the point with you and others in delivering this ambitious plan. So before we move on, what I want to do now is introduce a video from Grania Long. Grania Long is the new Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and we're delighted that she has contributed to today's launch and presentation.
Hello, I'm Grania Long and I'm Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Housing Executive, and I'm absolutely delighted to be joining you, even if it is virtually today, and also really happy to be able to congratulate you, Depaul, on your new strategic plan. Obviously, as organisations, we are partners, we work together, and the work that the Housing Executive does is critically important, but most importantly, because we are partners of yours, and the people that we serve and the people that we exist to serve, I think benefit because we work so closely together. So congratulations on your new strategic plan. And it is really important that organisations have documents that talk about the future and that are optimistic about the future. There's never been a more important time actually for organisations like Depaul to be looking to the future with optimism, because the work that you do is grounded in what is a very stark reality of homelessness for people, but actually the work that you do also improves lives, and it helps people improve their lives and work towards health and well-being and safety and security and all of those principles and values that you espouse. So to have a vision like the vision that you have in your strategic plan, I think sets you on a really strong path for the future. So congratulations and good wishes on that. And I think when I looked at the document, what was really encouraging to me was that we have a common vision. And that may not come as a surprise to anyone who works in housing, because those of us who are housing professionals know that most housing organisations exist to improve lives and to ensure that everyone has a place to call home. That's why we go to work every day. So our values are shared in many ways. They're focused on people and they're focused on what we can do to ensure that everybody can reach their full potential. Whether they are people who live in secure accommodation that they can afford themselves, or whether they are people who often struggle both to manage and maintain their homes, or indeed to access their homes, and their whole range of issues that our clients and service users and customers in the housing executive face, as do yours. Now, we're partners already, as you know, and we work very closely together, whether it's the Stella Maris in Belfast, or whether it's a range of other services, including in Derry, London, Derry and elsewhere. And of course, the fact that you work across the island of Ireland gives you real perspective on practice, north and south. And that's really makes you a really unique and special organisation. And I know, knowing David, that what we can benefit as an organisation, the housing executive working with you, you give us insight into what happens in the Republic, and I certainly value that. The pandemic has reminded us more than ever before that secure housing can be the difference between health and well-being on the one hand and crisis on the other. And I know we're all working really hard to learn lessons from the pandemic. And actually what I'm pleased to see in your plan is such a strong focus on housing-led solutions and on community and on prevention. And they've never been more important now as we think about and plan for and go forward into recovery. And let's hope that recovery is 1 or 2 or 3 years and no more than that, we hope. But what is really impressive and really pleasing to see in your strategy is that you are focused on those areas: housing-led solutions, community, and prevention, because the research tells us that's what works. And I think as an organisation, and organisations that are based on research, you're much more likely to be in the right position if it's based on what you do is based on evidence. I wouldn't want to miss the opportunity today to really acknowledge and thank everybody at Depaul for the work that you have done during the pandemic. I'm sure as colleagues you will be saying that to each other virtually today, but really I think your work has absolutely prevented a public health crisis for people who are either homeless or in really entrenched housing need. There's no question that the collaboration, the speed, the fleet of foot and the speed that housing professionals and frontline professionals undertook when the pandemic happened has definitely prevented deaths and saved lives. And I'm extremely grateful for that. I'm very proud of that work. And I'm sure that will stand us all in good stead as we now start to think about recovery. The fact that we have worked so closely together, the lessons that we can learn from that will really stand to us in the future. So that puts us in a very strong place to prevent future crises. But I wouldn't want to sugarcoat it either, and you know this as well as I do. We have a very difficult period ahead for people who are still struggling to recover from the pandemic, and for many of our customers and our service users and clients who have really had a very difficult time during the pandemic. So I think our jobs are going to be difficult in the months to come as we support all of those people who have mental health issues, who have anxiety, who have had a really lonely time during the pandemic, but also who now face a whole range of other challenges, such as financial challenges and so on, and high levels of deprivation and poverty. So we will continue and must continue to work together, and the work that we do, whether it's through the funding of supporting people projects, whether it's through homelessness work and housing work. I think we'll be working more and more together in the future, for good reasons and reasons that show how difficult the housing sector will face in the future. But I've no doubt the fact that you have that strategic plan in place will ensure that you stay on the right path, and that's really important for organisations. I personally have a really strong passion in terms of alleviating homelessness. It's something I've worked on for a number of years in my career, and particularly to improve standards in temporary accommodation, and particularly for children and young people. So I've made homelessness a priority for myself while in this role in the housing executive, and we're, as a housing executive, making homelessness a core priority of our work. So I look forward to continuing to work with David and across the entire team in the years to come, because I think it's never been more important that we harness our collective resources, people, time and money, as we try and solve really complex problems. So thank you, as I said, for asking me to be part of today's discussions. I'm really pleased and delighted to endorse the strategy. I think you're in a very good place as an organisation, and I think you've got a very optimistic and bold vision for the future. So I wish you every good luck. We'll be working well together, lots and lots in the future. But for now, thank you very much. Enjoy your time together, and we'll see you soon.
A really interesting recording that Gráinne had done earlier this week. But I think as well, it's important to say that, you know, when Depaul are looking at the strategic plan and we worked with all the stakeholders, it's just really nice to get some really key stakeholders back in to kind of rubber stamp and support us in the plan as well. So really very interesting words from Gráinne there. So thanks very much. So just going to move things along now. So we're going to go straight into another service user video and then straight into hearing from Mark McGreevy, our group CEO of Depaul. So the next service user is from Cusan Nua. So the person is from resettlement and has moved on to tenancy sustainment arm of the service. So she speaks about her experience within direct provision and how Depaul has supported her through the process of moving out of direct provision and into her own accommodation.
Hello everyone. I would like to give a brief background to my experience living in Ireland and how Depaul Charity have helped me integrate and into my community, how they've helped me secure accommodation, meaning that I can, you know, be a successful immigrant in Ireland. I arrived in Ireland a few years ago as an asylum seeker. I lived 4 years and a few months in direct provision. There have been so many challenges I've had to overcome as an asylum seeker, and you know, getting my residency was just the tip of the iceberg. There was so much more to come on, and after getting my my right to reside in Ireland, it dawned on me that now I have to leave the direct provision. I have to secure my own accommodation, and I also had to integrate into the community. Bear in mind that I have spent so many years in direct provision. There has been no education, no information on how to integrate into any community, and I just all of a sudden I had to leave the system and I had to find my own way, transitioning from direct provision to independent living. And fortunately for me, the Depaul Charity was already introduced into the direct provision that I lived, and I realized quickly that I didn't have to do this on my own. I had Depaul Charity, they were ready to fill in the gap. They were ready to give me the information I needed. They were ready to tell me how to look for accommodation and every other thing that came with it. They helped me. They assisted me to find housing. They assisted me with the app application. I think, yeah, app application to get housing. They explained how, you know, the bills work, how to find my own energy provider. It looks so simple now, but at the time I couldn't understand it because I come from a different country, a different system. Everything is so different from where I came from. So they had to sit me down and explain, you know, how the LEAP card, the transport system worked, how I could find my own energy providers, how to actually budget for bills, and they linked me with a family support center in my community. They've advocated for me with numerous organizations that I did not even know existed. They referred me to them. They continued to advocate until I became successful.
We're going to move over to Mark now. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen if that's okay. Okay, I hope you can all see that. And first, I want to say thanks to our service users that have delivered this morning. I just think that that's what we're here for, and it's wonderful to hear such positive stories that the work of Depaul can have in people's lives. So thank you to them. And afternoon, everybody, and thank you to David also for the invitation to share a little bit today. So I'm Mark McGreevy, has already been said. I'm the Group CEO of Depaul International, of which Depaul Island is a very vibrant part. And I've been with the Depaul Group since 1990, when we opened our first project in the UK in response to the rising number of young people sleeping rough on the streets of central London in the late 1980s. And at that time, we really pioneered this idea, this concept of low threshold services. It's hard to believe now, but at that point in time, if you wanted to access accommodation services, then you were interviewed and you either passed or failed. And certainly those that would fail were often the most vulnerable. So those people with drug and alcohol problems, those people with mental health problems, those people who had a criminal record. And what we said was, we want to get rid of that altogether. And we want to say to anybody that's homeless that the fact that you're sleeping on the streets is enough for us. Let's come inside and we'll talk about the issues once you're inside. And this is very much in keeping with the foundational values of Vincent de Paul himself, who in his own words 400 years ago said, you should focus on the poorest of the poor. And most importantly, this should be about action, not just words. We should do what we say we are going to do. And I'm proud that Depaul has kept to that. This photo was taken by me at the opening of our first hostel in Willesden Lane in 1990. And you can see representatives from our founders from the Vincent de Paul family here, the Daughters of Charity, the Society of St Vincent de Paul, the Vincentian Fathers, the Passage Day Centre based in London. And if you look very closely, indeed, you'll also see Princess Diana, who was a great supporter of our work from its inception until her very untimely death in 1997, with regular visits into late hours of the evening in our night shelters and hostels, but also the attendance at fundraising events that helped to launch the charity in the first place. And of course, over 31 years, Depaul has grown significantly. We now have in the region of 120 projects globally, and within the UK itself, we've grown to be a major homeless charity. However, in the year of the millennium, so the year 2000, I was asked to spend some time in Ireland reviewing the homeless provision of the SVP. So I came across, moved my family into Portmarnock, had a very happy time there. But during that 3-month period in 2001, a story appeared in the press, and it was about 2 young homeless people who'd been found dead as a result of hypothermia on the banks of the River Liffey, and both of them were heroin users. And at that time, there were no low threshold services in Ireland. If you were an active drug taker or street drinker, you had very few options available. And on the basis of that experience with similar groups in the UK, Depaul was asked whether we would be able to open a cold weather shelter in Dublin during that winter of 2001-2002. And the picture you see here is Clancy Barracks, which was our first project, and it was closing at that time in its previous use. So we moved in there brought some staff over from the UK, hired some staff in Ireland, and created this shelter. And it was meant to be very much a temporary intervention that we would come in, we would do this, and then we would go back to the UK. But it proved to be so successful in preventing deaths and in linking vulnerable people into the healthcare system that the government and the city authorities decided to make it a permanent fixture. And that was the beginning of Depaul in Ireland. Depaul in Ireland is shortly going to become the largest subsidiary in the Depaul group by some considerable way. And I think that's down to the efforts of staff and volunteers that are there. It's sad that we've had to grow at all, but it's great that we've got that safety net available. And we're very proud at Depaul International of the contribution that Depaul Ireland makes to civil society in Ireland. As I mentioned, in the same way that Depaul UK and Depaul Ireland have grown, so has the group as well. And David referred earlier in his talk that over the last 31 years, as well as Ireland and the UK, we've had subsidiaries in the USA, in France, in Croatia, Slovakia, and Ukraine, working with about 23,000 homeless people a year. And very much in keeping with the intentions outlined in the strategic plan that you have in front of you, Depaul Ireland has been really energetic in helping other subsidiaries in the group find their feet based on their experience. So, for example, it was Depaul Ireland who seconded one of their staff to be the first CEO of Depaul USA, Brian Higgins, who went over to Philadelphia. And now the USA has grown over the last 13 to 14 years to working across 7 cities in the United States, including Chicago, New York, and we had news last week that will be opening near to Skid Row in Los Angeles soon as well, a day center and accommodation project. Depaul Ireland also helped Depaul Slovakia. In fact, it was David Carroll himself who went over there to help Depaul Slovakia design the layout and the service offer for their 220-bed night shelter in Bratislava. It was also Depaul Ireland who helped Depaul Ukraine to set the governance standards for their work in a country where the voluntary sector is largely non-existent. It was crushed under communism. We're very grateful for this support, and even in my in-tray at the moment is a request from Depaul Croatia for staff from Ireland to go over and advise on working with people with multiple needs, and I'll be talking with David this afternoon, in fact, about that. We want to reflect that solidarity has been touched on during this planning cycle across the group by broadening this statement that we've always had by adding the words across the world. Of course, all subsidiaries' major focus, and should be their major focus, is in the country in which they operate. But where we can work together for the common good, we should do that. And I think we do that, and we do it very effectively. And I'll finish just by giving 2 examples, if I may, of how the group worked together in the coming years. Firstly, the Institute of Global Homelessness is a joint venture between Depaul International and Depaul University based in Chicago. It's the first institute of its kind which is looking at street homelessness as a global phenomenon, and it does that through commissioning research, elevating best practice, through leadership development, through promoting systemic change. And in relation to systemic change, in 2020, the IGH managed to secure the first ever debate on street homelessness at the UN, the first debate in its 75-year history. And this led in turn to a published declaration calling for a common definition, measurement, and action in response to that data. The long-term aim of this is that when the Sustainable Development Goals are recast in 2030, we'd like to see an accountable goal to reduce or even end street homelessness across the world. And Depaul Ireland will be playing their part in that global lobby and feeding in their own best practice. In fact, again, this afternoon at our senior management team meeting, which David will attend, we'll be looking now at an agreement we've just signed with the UN Habitat as partners to develop that longer term goal of a 2030 agenda. Finally, Depaul is part of the Famvin Homeless Alliance, a much bigger network managed by Depaul International, comprising of over 200 organisations working with the homeless who claim their roots in the name of St Vincent de Paul. And this photo is a conference in Rome that was held 2 years ago, bringing people together to share best practice. Just one of the goals of this alliance is to provide housing for 10,000 people over the 5-year period, which began in 2018, under the banner of this title, the 13 Houses campaign. You don't need to know the detail, but Vincent de Paul himself built 13 houses for street children back in 1642. And to date, Depaul, we've housed 6,000 people across Asia, Latin America, Africa, India, Europe, and Depaul Island and the Vincentian family in Ireland are playing a leading part in that and delivering housing counting towards that target. So I put this up. If you want any more details, you can come back to me. But just to say finally, a big thank you to David and all the staff and volunteers at Depaul Ireland. This strategic plan is both inspirational and testing, and it should be testing. That's what Depaul does best. It reaches out to challenges, and there's no better charity than Depaul Ireland to deliver that. So thank you, Depaul Ireland, for being an inspiration, not only in Ireland, but for the rest of the group and indeed for the rest of the world. Many thanks.
Thanks, Mark, for your supportive and inspirational words. I think it's really important that we look at our history in taking the next step forward. And we're really proud to contribute to this new vision of ending homelessness across the world. So thanks so much for your contribution today.
Thank you.
I now want to introduce our third poll, and this very much focuses on the themes that I talked about earlier on. And what theme do you believe you can contribute the most to? Is that our services and housing, our people, our organisation, our service users, or our voice? So what theme do you believe that you can contribute to the most? And I think that is an amazing testament to our plan, that we put our service users to the forefront of our plan, and where we can actually look at absolutely assisting our service users and people with lived experience move on with their lives. So that's hugely positive. Obviously, the other themes are very, very important, and you all have a part to play in each of the themes going forward. So thanks very much for that. So we're near the end today. Finally, what I want to do is make a call to action. You've heard the part that we have to play in becoming one of the most relevant, responsive charities in Ireland. And we've reflected on our roots in Ireland and internationally. This plan is about each and every one of us and the part we all have to play to create a path home for everyone who uses our services. So I'm making a call to everybody. Making a call that each service and department will have a path home staff ambassador, where possible, a service user ambassador as well, that will fly the flag for each service and department on the implementation of this plan. I'm making a call that over the summer and into the autumn, that each department and service will analyse what the strategy means to them and how it applies to them. I'm making a call that each service will work out what impact it will have on people's lives and on the people that we serve, and translate these into actions and achievable goals. And we'll have a chance to hear about all of these initiatives at our service delivery planning meetings that we're going to have later in the year. It's been a tough 15 months, but I truly believe that we can make this plan real and alive. And most importantly, inspire us, whether you're a staff member, volunteer, trustee, or person with lived experience of homelessness. Put our words into action. Thank you. And a final thank you to to our contributors, the Minister, the Chief Executive from the NIAG, Mark, Eamon, Mairead's emceeing for the day. All of our service users and their contributions. Thank you to our invited guests and all of our partners who've come along today, whether you're from a statutory agency, a funder, a corporate partner. Thank you so much to all of you who've brought the plan to this point within the consultation process. And you all know who you are and the part that you played to get this to the cohesive point that we've got to. Thanks so much to the design team and fundraising and communications. The executive and senior leadership group that I've talked about will be the service delivery mechanism going forward. Our chair, John Murphy, who can't be with us today, and our trustees, and Eamon Conlon, the chair of Depaul Housing, for his contribution today. Thank you to the internal advisory group and the planning group for this event. But most importantly, thank you to our service users, you people with lived experience of homelessness, the people that we are here to serve. So we're going to do our final poll. It's our fourth poll for the day. And it's, what methods do you believe will work best to embed the strategic plan in your everyday interaction within Depaul? Is that through our nominated service user ambassadors, through key working sessions, through team meetings, through nominated staff ambassadors, or all of the above? So I think that is fantastic that everybody sees that they've got a cohesive and integrated approach to delivering this. And I really look forward to delivering along with all of you this plan over the next 3 years. Thank you so much.
Before we finish up, we have one more video left. So this video is coming from Catherine, who is a peer advocate of ours. So Catherine has come through services and speaks about her experience of the programme, how it benefited her, and how she feels it has a positive impact on other service users. So over to Catherine to finish up today's event.
My name is Catherine. I work as a peer advocate with Depaul. I got involved with Depaul through Sister Susan. I went for the interview and I got it. The reason why I did it is for the first aid, to help people with mental problems, addictions, because it's in my family and I was homeless for 7 years. So they supported me in that, and they've helped me feel like I wasn't on my own, and supported me in the trauma of seeing someone OD or seeing someone with mental health problems, just being able to help them. The Depaul helped me when I started the course. I was struggling a lot with mental health around me and addiction around me, and when I took on the course I was really interested in the first aid, and when I got to do the course it was like people that thought the same way as myself to help people, and that helped me a lot to start engaging again, and kind of heal myself from everything that I was going through in homelessness and my family. Yeah, I do think the programme helps. It helps people know that they matter, because when you're in them homeless services, sometimes when you're around it all the time, you feel like you don't matter, and it just makes them feel like that they matter. So it does help in a sense, like it trains their brain back to I do matter, and looking after their health, their well-being, and it changes them towards other people in there, and it's like a chain reaction. That's what it's like.
that wraps up our event for today. So I just wanted to thank everyone who joined, who spoke. A particular thanks to the service users who were involved. Just to say personally, it is an absolute privilege to work with you. And so thank you so much. So a copy of the plan is now available on our website at depaulcharity.org. Or if you'd like to know any more about the organisation or how to get involved or anything like that, again, visit depaulcharity.org. Thank you everyone for joining, and have a lovely afternoon.